Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology and culture in its myriad of forms. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? It's good to be back.
It is good. Good to have you back, Ben. Looked like you had a lot of fun while you were away.
Absolutely. So I've been in China and Japan for the last 4 odd weeks, and magnificent countries to visit. Highly recommend it. And the added bonus, of course, is that through Japan I could treat my iPhone 7, my new iPhone 7, as a mobile production studio. And I've spoken about this before, Steve, but it really is amazing that these modern smartphones are that capable, that you can literally just put this thing in your pocket and head out and you can produce some really high quality stuff. But not only produce it, you can post-produce it, you can upload it for everyone to watch, distribute it, all from the phone. And that still boggles my mind a little bit. I mean, I'm sure the new generations coming through, I think that's old hat. But coming from where we've come from, I think that's a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, well, those videos certainly looked good, and that is a sign of the times that you can now instantly share your experiences wherever you are in the world.
And also different types of experiences and videos too. I think it. I can say this coming from a more traditional background, if you could want to call it that. We weren't considered traditional at the time, considering we were shooting everything on digital when we started. But I think it's different types of content you can produce. It encourages you to create different types of content because you can. I think, in the old days, you had to set up the shot, get the tripod out, set up the thing. And yes, you can still do that with traditional cameras and get certain types of shots that are quite manifestly different in terms of using lenses and whatnot. But there's nothing that kind of beats pulling a phone out of your pocket, which is what I did a lot of the time. All I did was I just whipped it out, held it there for 10 seconds, grabbed the shot and put it back in and nobody even really notices what you're doing, because in some instances, you might get people who feel awkward or whatever it is that you're doing, but you just look like another tourist and you could be producing your next opus with the thing, which is really quite amazing. But in light of that, I just wanted to just speak a little bit too about mobile devices like the iPhone and the iPad, and then just talk a little bit about those new MacBook Pros as well that were recently released. And although we were talking about this before we got on, that iOS and probably other competing like platforms like Android are not at that, probably still not at that point. I don't feel like I'm at that point where I can 100% walk out and feel like I'm going to get 100% functionality as a content creator going outside in the world with it. It's pretty close. And the example I wanted to use was that whole thing with the royalty-free music that I'd gotten. A lot of the websites that I'd had a look at actually stipulated that they couldn't be downloaded directly to an iPad or an iPhone, which was just irritating because I was planning on actually doing that while I was overseas to sort of complete the whole trifecta of, the whole picture of the whole thing. And it turned out that what I had to do was use my Mac before I left to download a bunch of music, which I would then either access from iCloud or sync to the device before I left. So if they can work out that sort of thing, I can't imagine that we're not really that far off from maybe, a Mac or a PC not necessarily being needed by even professionals wanting to produce content.
Yeah, well, it's amazing, isn't it? Like, we've spoken about it a lot, whether it's about the iPad Pro, whether it's about, your phone as your primary device. It sounds like this experience for you, they're closing that gap. So I guess it maybe is now only a year or two away before that one device will be a platform which you can use to create basically anything. You'd be very productive with it. So that's pretty exciting.
I guess being old school too, I still kind of have my attachments to the PC Mac hardware. I briefly had a quick look at one of the new MacBook Pros, and it's been all sorts of uproar about it, that it's not really a pro machine because it doesn't have all the ports and all that sort of thing. I just think it's a reflection of the world that it's going into. For me personally, I kind of like the idea that there's only one type of port on the machine, and that the 4 that are on the machine also double as a charging port. So it doesn't matter which one you stick it in, it's going to charge it. Capability-wise, it's, obviously they're still capable. There's all this thing about it not having enough RAM for a pro user. Maybe these people, I don't know, maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe these people just need to get over it, because I kind of think that, I'm using a 3-year-old machine. I can't believe I've had this Mac for 3 years now. And it works perfectly well. It even does the 4K content, that I'm now producing with my iPhone. So I know that there are very high-end use cases for these machines by, Pixar and all of that. But, what are you going to do?
I don't know. I mean, I'm torn on this because I'm a very old school, and I think this is what we're seeing. This is, the beginning of the end of old school computing. The ports that have been on your computers now for the last 15 years are going, and there's going to be a single port. I think there is the argument with Apple is that they're limiting our options once again, and it's just another accessory from Apple. Oh, you just need an adapter from Apple, we've got to go through all of that again. But by the same token, I mean, I still remember being disappointed when Apple took or dropped the 3.5 floppy drive from the range. I can't even remember when that was, but I think it might have been when I got the G4. And I survived.
Well, that's the thing. You can still do everything. And
it's a bit like not having a headphone jack in your phone. I don't know. We'll all survive. We'll all get over it.
Having said that, I encountered a real-world scenario where that was a problem while I was overseas. So the 4K camera, and you obviously taking a lot of photos as well, really sapped the battery during the day. So I'd get to about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd have to get my, sort of lithium battery out to give it a charge because we were out and about. And of course, when you plug it in to get charged, there were 2 instances where we were traveling at the end of the day on a day trip back on a train back to where we were. So I said, all right, it's going to take 2 hours to get back to wherever we were staying. So I'll plug it in now because we're not going to be doing anything. And then I realized after I plugged it in, I can't actually use it to listen to music or listen to a podcast now. So that was a real world example of where it wasn't useful and where I probably needed a double head dongle or something to make it work.
Oh, there you go. But that's only another accessory from Apple.
What's that? But I mean, I figured, well, that's only going to happen once every 2 years or something like that, maybe, if I encounter a scenario like that.
Look, I think that's the thing. I think with the single port structure that Apple's moving to, the issue isn't so much the port. I think the benefits are there that you're saying, but I think everyone just gets tired, of having to go through all that trouble of getting all the different USB cables and Thunderbolt and whatever else, and it's taking that final step. But once everyone's on it,
I mean, that's what I mean. Another year or two, everyone's got the peripherals with the new port, and then you don't need to bother,
That's right.
doing it. So, and I guess as a final point on this before we move on is that I'd read that despite all of the hoopla and the negative press and the backlash, they're selling like hotcakes apparently. So
look, I'm sure they're a good machine.
Apple knows what they're doing. I'm sure they've done the research on who would want this.
Oh yeah, I mean, I read that whole a diatribe after diatribe on the touch bar, and it's kind of like, yeah, when you have to talk about it, it doesn't sound quite right. It kind of sounds like, what is it, a gimmick, whatever. But I'm sure when you actually sit down and use it, I bet it's bloody useful, because I've never seen Apple put anything in that isn't. So, I think everyone should have a good lie down.
Yeah. On that point, we're going to now pivot to something where people are having trouble having a bit of a lie down. Completely different topic now, and our main one, which is the US election and its outcome. And It's welcome to Trump world. That's where we're heading. It started out as a seemingly funny joke. It was relentlessly compounded by the media and late night comedians as something that could never seriously happen for the better part of the 2-year campaign period, and then it happened. It seemed like every time someone said Trump's never gonna. Where did it start? It started with Trump's announcement of his candidacy. He's not serious. Yeah. Trump won't get the go far in the primaries. Trump won't get the nomination. Trump won't beat Clinton. And it seemed like every single time it was like, maybe they should have realized after the second or third of these pronouncements of where this was going. But we're not going to talk about, obviously the man himself and all of that sort of thing, because there's plenty of that out there. But what's interesting is, I guess culturally, is just how this has all kind of happened, and the fact that it's turned a whole lot of principles about, say, data collection in polling and in these types of races, and just totally turned it on its head. Essentially, it caught a whole bunch of people who are using orthodox methods napping, and I think they're going to be rewriting a few rule books after this one.
Well, I think there was a lot of sticking the head in the sand, and I think for the political classes who hold the status quo, that they kept on saying he's not going to win, and I guess I believed them because that's what everyone was saying. From positions of authority with experience, oh no, he can't win. But now, probably with the benefit of hindsight, you can see they were just sticking their heads in the sand.
Yeah,
the data is interesting because we've seen it in the Australian electoral system with the Senate. People have referred to it as gaming the Senate system or the voting system, which I think is a bit unfair. It's merely using data to predict or to create ways to get elected. And like it or not, maybe our system's outdated, but that's the system we got. So either change it, and I don't know what you'd change it to. It'd have to go to crazy first past the post. It could, that's the only other option. Where you've got states and quotas, you can game the system.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that while all this ridicule was being heaped on Trump, while the nastiness of the campaign was raging, and it really was very visceral sort of, whole election campaign, he obviously had somebody crunching the numbers out the back who wasn't crazy, who wasn't engaged in all the hyperbole, and they knew exactly what they had to do, and they then systematically ensured that they would get the votes in the counties or in the states they needed to and win the election. And that's really what the Democrats should have been able to do.
Kind of a red flag for me, I think, was the fact that he kept on with it, because for someone like him, and it's obvious because I think you said before we got on, he is who he is, and it exposed exactly who he was this campaign.
That's right.
Someone like that doesn't bother continuing on to do something. He even said it would be if he did all of this and then he lost, it would be the whole thing would have been a complete waste of his time. And of course the amount of people, like, of all the offensive things, that's not really that offensive, but he did offend a few people in terms of the upholding of the privilege of running as something that isn't a waste of time. But that aside, this is someone who was in it to win it. He was not gonna, it doesn't matter if he's got nothing that he wants to do, say for instance. He just wanted to get to the end there and say, yep, I won, because he doesn't like losers, as he keeps saying. And that's what we ended up with. He's
proven himself to be right. I mean, look, I'm a big believer in the KISS principle, keep it simple, and maybe there are simpler explanations, but wow, I can see that maybe he created this distraction. He let the campaign get ugly and uglier, and he distracted everyone who was opposing him into this fight about morals, into this fight about ethics, and they took the moral high ground. And quite obviously, I think the way the opposition to Trump was going, well, he's such an awful person, he can't win. Good must win, which that's a very loose definition, I'm afraid, for the Democrats. But anyway, good must win. And so maybe they didn't do what they should have, which were the very basics that someone in the Trump machine was doing. Someone in Trump's team knew exactly what they had to do and went out and did it. And, geez, whatever you can say about Trump, if he was aware of what he was doing, if he was aware of the distraction, and if he had that team out the back actually doing what they needed to do, then that's probably why he's done quite well in business, whether he's dubious or not.
Regardless, it's going to send the world into a trajectory that might be a bit weird for a while, to say the least. The one other thing I wanted to mention was I was watching a bit of the Channel 9 coverage. For some reason, I was flipping between them, and that one seemed to be the most entertaining because that's where all of this heads. And they had the music and all of that, and I just wonder, this is Australian TV. I also saw some CNN ads where they were promoting like a boxing match, and you kind of think, well, so a guy like this is inevitable. People are like, how can a reality TV star become president of the United States? And it's like, really? Like, well, are you really that surprised given, where your culture is going?
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think politically now America has collectively jumped the shark.
Yeah.
I think, and it's not because Trump won, but it's what this election campaign became.
Yeah.
It became a reality TV show. It became insults. It became a winner and a loser, not two people vying for the presidency. And I think that really what it shows as well is that American politics now will go to the extreme of celebrity and popularity. And I can well see, Kanye facing off against Clint Eastwood at the next election.
Well, anything's possible now after what happened this year.
Well, if somebody from outside politics can just use their popularity to create a TV show that just happens to be the most powerful election in the world and gets themselves elected, what's to stop Kanye living his dream in 2020?
Yeah, absolutely. Just one other thing I wanted to touch on was this idea of a movement. We've got Brexit that's occurred, Trump's election. This idea of the disaffected working class voter, predominantly white voter, that has been disenchanted with the system, feels like they're being left behind. Is being affected by globalization, etc., etc. It just makes me wonder. Paul Keating said this week in an interview on 7:30 that one of the reasons why it was more exacerbated in America is that, say, unlike Australia, where we've had real wage growth. And I guess progress in society. He literally said we have a better society than they do because we've had advances that have allowed the middle class to still flourish, even though now it's being argued that they're struggling a bit. But that doesn't even compare anywhere close to what's happened in America, where they've had no progress in the middle class for like 3 decades. And it just makes me wonder how apart from the obvious things around power and greed, how that can be allowed to happen in a society that prides itself as being the best and freest democracy with for its citizens in the world, and also provides the most opportunity for its citizens in the world. The American dream doesn't look like it's been there for a while.
Well, yeah, and I think that the thing that everybody's missing when they talk about the disaffected Trump voter, there was a lot of support for Bernie Sanders, who captures another group of disillusioned people that tend to be younger, and they're disillusioned for their own reasons. And I think that you're absolutely right, Ben. I mean, there's in the States now, there's huge amount of change. For some, there's been no change for a long time, and they do feel abandoned. And then I think there is also others who feel we have social and ethical responsibilities that aren't being fulfilled. And I think that's right across the Western world. So I think it's a very difficult time in politics, and I think the fact that we've got the digital technologies to communicate and coordinate our,
disaffection,
displeasure, or disaffection, it is, makes it so. I'll just go out and say this. I saw something weird. I'm not sure it actually happened, but did someone actually create an app so people could swap votes? So if you weren't in a marginal state, you could actually trade your vote with someone who was?
I had heard something about that. I don't know what the details were, but yes, that's right. Yeah.
What on earth is going on?
I think it was...
it was a campaign, I think, around showing your... I think it was an anti-Trump campaign, but still, I guess...
It was Republicans that didn't want Trump in the White House.
Well, it didn't work, but anyway, I mean, just how crazy is that?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got Airbnb, we've got Uber, and now we've got
vote swapper,
file sharing and vote swapping. Go figure. I just thought that if that's just started this election, can you imagine what it'd be like in 4 years' time?
Just one final point, and I hope you want to be hopeful on this one, is that I still couldn't imagine myself ever voting for someone like that. But in looking at the reasoning behind why someone, say, in our demographic would in that country, I can just maybe understand if they're doing it as a protest vote, sort of like a middle finger to the establishment. But I don't know if I heard a lot of that when people were asked about it. It seemed a lot of what I heard was more along the lines of, he says what he thinks, and he's not like them. He'll get stuff done. And maybe they were just saying that, but if they actually believe that, I think that's one of the most disturbing things of all out of this.
Well, even alongside of that, I saw another study that was done probably about 6 or 8 weeks ago amongst Trump supporters, and a significant proportion, maybe 60 or 70%, didn't like him.
Yeah.
But they liked what he said.
And that's what I mean. If they literally liked what he said.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's just completely bizarre. So you vote for the person you don't like, and they said all those things. They said he's obnoxious and he's not polite and all these things, but I'm going to vote for him because I like what he says. Well, yeah. I always thought that who you were and what you said were kind of the same. It's just, I don't know.
Not in the social media fueled cultural celebrity world that we're living in now.
Well, but maybe it's as you're saying there, which is like there's just that school of thought. It's what they think, so they don't really care what sort of person says it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a very weird week, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we might wrap it up there, Steve. I'm sure we'll revisit this again. But yeah, we'll see where this all leads us. I kind of had this sort of sick feeling in the pit of my stomach when when you're watching an election night coverage, and they start saying, "Oh, Trump's like the one side's going this way," and then you feel like a momentum swing.
Yeah.
And I knew it before. I think they called Florida. Which was at that point that it was still 50-50 the way it was going. The way they were all the commentariat were talking, it was like, yeah, nah, it's finished. And that's when I felt it, and I thought, oh, let's hope this turns out all right, because it could be very bad.
Look, I'm sure that you've got the whole administration there, and in his speech, and once again, they're just words, so who knows? But it certainly appeared to me that Trump was ready to sit down and do some work, and probably realises his limitations and not having been a career politician, and he'll get the right people in and he'll get stuff done, Ben.
Because that's what he does. All right. So don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and contact there. You can interact with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. I'd love to hear from you. We've got our photos on Instagram and Flickr. I've been busy on that in the last couple of weeks overseas, so hopefully you've enjoyed that photography. And if you think anyone's interested in this content that we produce on a regular basis, the shows, blog posts, photography, whatnot, send them to scitechculture.com. We'd greatly appreciate that. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.